Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. It was a happy time. The days were peaceful and serene. The nights brought with them neither fear nor care, no languishing in a wretched prison, or associating with wretched men, nothing but pleasant and happy thoughts. Every morning he went to a white-headed old gentleman who lived near the little church, who taught him to read better and to write, and who spoke so kindly and took such pains that Oliver could never try enough to please him. Then he would walk with Mrs. Maylie and Rose, and hear them talk of books, or perhaps sit near them in some shady place, and listen whilst the young lady read, which he could have done until it grew too dark to see the letters. Then he had his own lesson for the next day to prepare, and at this he would work hard, in a little room which looked into the garden, till evening came slowly on, when the ladies would walk out again, and he with them, listening with such pleasure to all they said, and so happy if they wanted a flower that he could climb to reach, or had forgotten anything he could run to fetch, that he could never be quick enough about it. When it became quite dark and they returned home, the young lady would sit down to the piano and play some pleasant air or sing, in a low and gentle voice, some old song which it pleased her aunt to hear. There would be no candles lighted at such times as these, and Oliver would sit by one of these windows, listening to the sweet music in a perfect rapture. And when Sunday came, how different the day was spent from any way in which he had ever spent it yet, and how happily too, like all the other days in that most happy time. There was little church in the morning, with the green leaves fluttering at the windows, the birds singing without, and the sweet-smelling air stealing in at the low porch, and filling the homely building with its fragrance. The poor people were so neat and clean, and knelt so reverently in prayer, that it seemed a pleasure, not a tedious duty. There, assembling there together, and through the singing might be rude, it was real, and sounded more musical, to Oliver's ears at least, than any had ever heard in church before. Then there were the walks as usual, and many calls at the clean houses of the laboring men, and at night Oliver read a chapter or two from the Bible, which he had been studying all the week, and in the performance of which duty he felt more proud and pleased than if he had been the clergyman himself. In the morning Oliver would be afoot by 6 o'clock, roaming the fields and plundering the hedges far and wide, for nosegays of wild flowers with which he would return laden home, and which it took great care and consideration to arrange to the best advantage for the embellishment of the breakfast table. There was fresh groundsel, too, for Miss Maylie's birds, with which Oliver, who had been studying the subject under the able tuition of the village clerk, would decorate the cages in the most approved taste. When the birds were made all spruce and smart for the day, there was usually some little commission of charity to execute in the village, or, failing that, there was rare cricket playing, sometimes on the green, or, failing that, there was always something to do in the garden, or about the plants, to which Oliver, who had studied this science also under the same master, who was a gardener by trade, applied himself with hearty good will until Miss Rose made her appearance, when there were 1,000 commendations to be bestowed on all he had done. So 3 months glided away, 3 months which, in the life of the most blessed and favored of mortals, might have been unmingled happiness, and which, in Oliver's, were true felicity, with the purest and most amiable generosity on one side, and the truest, warmest soul felt gratitude on the other. It is no wonder that, by the end of that short time, Oliver Twist had become completely domesticated with the old lady and her niece, and that the fervent attachment of his young and sensitive heart was repaid by their pride in and attachment to himself. Chapter 33, wherein the happiness of Oliver and his friends experiences a sudden check. Springs flew swiftly by, and summer came. If the village had been beautiful at first, it was now in the full glow and luxuriance of its richness. The great trees which had looked shrunken and bare in the earlier months had now burst into strong life and health, and stretching forth their green arms over the thirsty ground, converted open and naked spots into choice nooks, where was a deep and pleasant shade from which to look upon the wide prospect, steeped in sunshine, which lay stretched beyond. The earth had donned her mantle of brightest green, and shed her richest perfumes abroad. It was the prime and vigor of the year. All things were glad and flourishing. Still, the same quiet life went on at the little cottage, and the same cheerful serenity prevailed among its inmates. Oliver had long since grown stout and healthy, but health or sickness made no difference in his warm feelings of a great many people. He was still the same gentle, attached, affectionate creature that he had been when pain and suffering had wasted his strength, and when he was dependent for every slight attention and comfort on those who tended him. One beautiful night, when they had taken a longer walk than was customary with them, for the day had been unusually warm, and there was a brilliant moon and a light wind had sprung up, which was unusually refreshing. Rose had been in high spirits too, and they had walked on in merry conversation until they had far exceeded their ordinary bounds. Mrs. Maylie being fatigued, they returned more slowly home. The young lady, merely throwing off her simple bonnet, sat down to the piano as usual. After running abstractedly over the keys for a few minutes, she fell into a low and very solemn air, and as she played it, they heard a sound as if she were weeping. "Rose, my dear?" said the elder lady. Rose made no reply, but played a little quicker, as though the words had roused her from some painful thoughts. "Rose, my love?" cried Mrs. Maylie, rising hastily and bending over her. "What is this? In tears? My child, my dear child, what distresses you?" "Nothing, aunt, nothing," replied the young lady. "I don't know what it is. I can't describe it, but I feel—" "Not ill, my love?" interposed Mrs. Maylie. "No, no, oh, not ill," replied Rose, shuddering as though some deadly chillness were passing over her while she spoke. "I shall be better presently. Close the window, pray." Oliver hastened to comply with her request. The young lady, making an effort to recover her cheerfulness, strove to play some livelier tune, but her fingers dropped powerless over the keys. Covering her face with her hands, she sank upon a sofa, and gave vent to the tears which she was now unable to repress. "My child," said the elderly lady, folding her arms about her, "I never saw you so before." "I would not alarm you if I could avoid it," rejoined Rose, "but indeed I have tried very hard, and cannot help this. I fear I am ill, aunt." She was indeed, for when candles were brought, they saw that in the very short time which had elapsed since their return home, the hue of her countenance had changed to a marble whiteness. Its expression had lost nothing of its beauty, but it was changed, and there was an anxious, haggard look about the gentle face which it had never worn before. Another minute, and it was suffused with a crimson flush, and a heavy wildness came over the soft blue eye. Again this disappeared, like the shadow thrown by a passing cloud, and she was once more deadly pale. Oliver, who watched the old lady anxiously, observed that she was alarmed by these appearances, and so in truth was he. But seeing that she affected to make light of them, he endeavored to do the same, and they so far succeeded, that when Rose was persuaded by her aunt to retire for the night, she was in better spirits, and appeared even in better health, assuring them that she felt certain she should rise in the morning quite well. "I hope," said Oliver, when Mrs. Maylie returned, "that nothing is the matter. She don't look well tonight, but—" The old lady motioned to him not to speak, and sitting herself down in a corner of the room, remained silent for some time. At length she said in a trembling voice, "I hope not, Oliver. I have been very happy with her for some years. Too happy, perhaps. It may be time that I should meet with some misfortune, but I hope it is not this." "What?" inquired Oliver. "The heavy blow," said the old lady, "of losing the dear girl who has so long been my comfort and happiness. And we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care and thanks again.